I think they vaulted themselves today into the conversation to go and win the Premier League next season.
Unsavoury scenes in that fight towards the end, and in the end it wasn't too bad a season really for Chelsea, was it? Securing a Champions League qualification for next season, finishing inside the top 4. Did look for a little part of the season like they weren't going to do that. They won the Conference League as well in fine style, beating Real Betis in the final, and now they've won the Club World Cup in convincing fashion too, beating Paris Saint-Germain 3-0. So it ended up being a pretty good season. How on earth did they manage this? Because we were talking with Alex about this game yesterday on the show, and I was saying I couldn't really see any other way for Chelsea to get a result from this, that it was going to be another comfortable PSG victory, given the fact that Bayern Munich managed to put in a good performance against PSG earlier on in this competition, didn't manage to win it. Botafogo did beat the Parisians, but other than that, didn't really see much of a way for Chelsea to be able to get past them, but they produced a perfect game plan.
And go back to the Champions League final, they beat Inter 5-0, they beat Real Madrid 4-0 in the semi-final, they beat Atletico 4-0 in the group stage, and they just were on their way, and we were talking about them as the next great dominant team, as on the level as Pep's Barcelona in 2009 and 2011. And instead they go and lose to Chelsea in convincing fashion. Chelsea did everything right to negate this team. The possession figures look one way, but this is a different game from 3-0, especially in the second half. The way that Chelsea controlled things in the first half, they were able to take advantage of the vulnerabilities that are only theoretically there against PSG, in my opinion. When you look at the first goal, it's a direct ball. You got to go win it off a Nuno Mensch. Malo Gusto went and did it, and then that creates the space in the opening. They were attacking 4- and 5-man PSG defenses, as opposed to what usually happens, which is you have the ball and they press you off it and they make it difficult for you to complete passes, never mind actually get up the pitch. You look at the second goal, and it comes from, again, Chelsea being able to win those duels, to give away from Dembele in midfield, and Chelsea race forward, and all of a sudden they catch Mendes and Hakimi forward. And so you see Cole Palmer, what he did in this game, you have to give him a ton of credit, and has a terrific record in finals as well, having scored in the Euro final last summer as well for England in what was an ultimate defeat to Spain. But he was absolutely fantastic on the day. You have to take advantage of the chances that you get, but they were able, Chelsea, in my opinion, today, to take advantage of the things that normally you would only see as, oh, if we can get at their defense when Mendes and Hakimi are high, but no one can do it. And so how are you going to do it? And Chelsea just absolutely nailed it on the day. Manesca with flawless tactics. And he was saying in the build-up, what are you going to do knowing that you have to suffer a lot? He goes, why do we have to suffer a lot? We can play these guys at their game. This is what we try and do. And he implemented his game plan flawlessly today. And honestly, the biggest day of his managerial career and the biggest day for Chelsea since they won the Champions League 4 years ago. This was an absolutely statement performance about not just where they are now, but where they are going as a football club.
And he spoke, didn't he, pre-match about this being kind of a chess match and had to come up with the right tactics. And we saw that they absorbed the possession from PSG and hit them on the break and managed to get those 3 goals. They were good at finishing. It was a good goalkeeping performance from Sanchez. He made a couple of crucial saves as well, getting down well, particularly to save one of them. And all of these players really contributed in a convincing victory against PSG on Maresca. I think there were some people, when they went through that difficult patch in the Premier League season last year, when they were losing those games and started to looking like they weren't going to finish inside the top 4, that were questioning whether or not it was the right time. Was it a big job too soon for someone like Enzo Maresca? But I think he's answered those critics. And now you feel that it was the perfect timing to go for a manager like him and to give him the opportunity to perform at the top level.
Yeah, they were in search of a process manager who was going to implement a style of play and get this team playing more similar to the Guardiola teams. Obviously, Maresca having been an assistant coach for Guardiola at one point, and you see the principles there. And I think there are still times where the Chelsea fans find the tactics not quite what they're used to, or not quite what they're used to winning with. And yet now, at this point, he has won so much over the course of this Club World Cup, and even having won the Conference League as well over the last 2 months in terms of credit in the bank with this fan base, because I think there were some that were just as skeptical as the rest of us, going, is this going to work? Is he going to finally be the man that turns Chelsea around, that develops some of these individual players? And some of those individual players turned in magnificent performances throughout this game and throughout this tournament. Think of Enzo Fernandez in midfield. The way that his role has evolved has been tremendous. Reece James playing in midfield, moving from right back so you can play Malo Gusto. And there's, from the front all the way on back, I think you saw so many many individual performances get better over the course of the tournament. And we will look back on that loss to Flamengo, where they're pretty soundly outplayed in the group stage as kind of the outlier, but otherwise beat a couple of Brazilian teams on the way and then saved their best performance for last. They were ready on the final day, and Maresca, I think, wins all sorts of credit here by getting it right against this opponent. It's not just you beat, let's just say they played, I don't know, Borussia Dortmund or even Bayern. It's PSG, the team that we spent 4 days talking about how this is the dynasty of the future. And in 4 days, you're able to figure out how to beat them with all the craziness of being in New York and the publicity and all that. They figured it out on the day, and they got it absolutely spot on.
Having won this, how does it change their expectations? I mean, maybe it changes the fans' expectations, but as a group and the manager, Enzo Maresca, what they feel will be success for next season?
I think they vaulted themselves today into the conversation to go and win the Premier League next season. I don't think before today there was really any kind of expectation that they would be up there on the level with Liverpool in the league last year, with Manchester City, and even with Arsenal. But I think today, by winning this game in this fashion against that opponent, you cannot help but think going forward, this might have been the turning point that Chelsea had been waiting for. We know they've spent over $1 billion on this team, and that they have so much talent, and they keep bringing in more talent and spending and spending and spending, and at some point it was going to work. This might finally be the point where it starts to work. And I think fans have every right going into next season. We won a European trophy. We qualified for the Champions League. We went and won the Club World Cup in the fashion in which we won it. Now it's time. It's now time for Chelsea to be a team that is regularly competing for the biggest honors. They just won one of the biggest honors. And I think now, heading towards the Premier League next season, heading towards the Champions League next season, you can see them kicking on even further. And I think their fans will start to expect, all right, when we come up against Liverpool, when we come up against Arsenal, when we come up against Manchester City in the Premier League, we are ready to go and compete against them and deliver good performances. I wasn't confident they can do that until we saw it today from them against an opponent like Paris Saint-Germain, where they handle them so comprehensively. I really do think going forward that this is a team that's ready to contend.
Let's look at where it went wrong for PSG today, and there are several oven-ready, I suppose, excuses you can make, given that it has been such a long season. They've played in so many games, the fatigue element of it didn't really show up today. So many of these stars were off their level, you know, anywhere near the kind of level we've seen in the last couple of months or so. Was there anything that you think Luis Enrique watched this game and is going to be worried about prior to the start of next season?
For me, it's only about the vulnerabilities, because we saw this with Guardiola's Manchester City teams when they would get hit on the break fairly regularly. It seemed like PSG had solved that problem. Solved the problem of being incredibly attacking, committing numbers forward, being fluid in their movement with fullbacks getting forward into attacking positions, with midfielders dropping back, and yet somehow they figured out the spacing and getting everything right. And today, Chelsea found every space that you can theoretically attack them in. And so is that now a game plan that other teams can go and follow and see what the vulnerabilities are in this team? Because every system forgo something and add something. And so when you forgo what they forgo, which is kind of a more traditional defensive shape, are there spaces to go and find? And Chelsea went and found them today, and I think a lot of teams going into next season are going to watch the film of this game and wonder, how can we replicate that? Now, I think a big part of that is, you see the last name on that shirt right there, breaking up a fight, Beraldo. William Pacho being out today was a big miss, it turned out. And it's interesting because I think he's a player that didn't get enough credit, enough conversation didn't happen around him, because he was a new signing, and he's a player that was relatively unproven on a stage like this, and yet it turns out they really miss him. And so you see kind of those first 6 games, 16-4, 1 against, and all of a sudden they got absolutely destroyed today. And I thought as well, just to kind of talk about those scenes at the end, I thought they were fairly lacking in grace in their defeat today. Taking a terrible red card from Joao Neves, having a go at Marc Cucurella. It needed a VAR review, but eventually given as a red card. Several other bad challenges, getting involved in the fights and getting involved in the needle. I thought it was poor from them, the way that they didn't really accept their defeat. They're not used to losing at this point. They expect to win, and when that happens, when you get beat, which they got soundly beaten today, I'm surprised that they didn't handle themselves in a better manner, because I don't think they represented the football club very well at all. And it's a sour taste to leave what was a brilliant season with. And that is kind of the peril of having those seasons go over 12 months, is they might not end on the perfect note. If it had ended in Munich against Inter with a 5-0 win, that's the perfect note, but they couldn't finish it off. And I think that left a sour taste in everyone's mouth, and they kind of acted out as a result. I thought it was really poor from PSG in the end.
Not great to see towards the end of the game. But in the end, a pretty successful Club World Cup, wasn't it? It kept us entertained.
Yes, indeed.
Plenty to talk about, and we did enjoy watching the competition.